Welcome to the Airgun Show. In this week's episode I've got a few tips that I hope will help you to shoot more accurately. But before that, I'm back on the rats, only this time I'm going against my usual advice and trying hollow point pellets for a bit of a change. Right, I'm out on the farm tonight and I'm planning to do some ratting. I'm expecting to get quite a lot of shots, so I thought for a change I'd take a look at the ammo that I'm using. It's not something that I usually talk a lot about, and to be honest with you, my usual advice when choosing pellets is to stick with a quality domed pellet. And to be honest with you, I would stick by that. I would certainly stand by that. By and large, my feeling is that pointed pellets don't tend to be particularly accurate, and hollow point pellets with a sub 12 foot-pound air gun, I don't believe that gun is really generating enough velocity for that pellet to open up and do what it's supposed to do. However, quite recently, my friend Mike Morton at Airgun Shooter magazine has been doing a lot of testing with Predator Polymag shorts, and these pellets basically go against everything I stand for in terms of pellet design. They've got a pointed polymer tip which sits inside a sort of hollow dum-dum point. So for me, just one glance is a massive turn-off. However, Mike's findings, he discovered them to be pretty accurate, and in terms of the wound channel that they create, they do appear to deliver a lot more shock energy than a conventional domed pellet and even a conventional hollow point pellet. So I thought I'd give them a try. The sub 12 foot-pound Impact Mark II absolutely loves them. Certainly out to about 20 metres anyway, which is perfect for ratting. I would still say those groups open up a little bit too much for my liking beyond that, so I'd be inclined to go back to a domed pellet for longer range shooting. But these really do seem to be doing the business on rats lately. The Impact Mark II's high capacity magazine is full of them, so we're going to see if we can put them to the test. And, as expected, the first opportunity to try out the ammo comes very quickly. That was a very conclusive wallop with the first shot with the Predators, and it's not very long before I get a chance to line up for another one. Wow, that was a pretty good start to the session. Fairly busy first half hour, and as I hope you'll be able to see, that was some pretty clean kills. Now, most of these shots are between about 10 and 18 metres, so it is really easy work for the Impact Mark II. What I'm going to do now is try and film some of these shots through the pod, showing you the crosshairs so you can hopefully see exactly where I'm aiming and how the rats react when the pellet strikes.
Even after that busy start to the session, there still seemed to be plenty of rats on the move.
Well, that was 3 in fairly quick succession from around the pallets then. You often get that at a spot that's been quiet for a long time. Suddenly you get a very swift flurry of activity. I don't know whether it's a family of rats coming out or what, but it certainly happened over there then. Now those shots are about 12 metres, so they just need an absolute whisker of holdover, and as you can see, those rats didn't know what had hit them. That was another one from by the containers there. Now, that's always a really productive area. Another great thing about that spot is that it's about 14 metres away, which is bang on the initial 0 for this setup, and it means I can just aim straight at them.
As you can see, this area of the farm is used as a bit of a dumping ground, and the rats clearly like it.
Well, that was another quick flurry, all concentrated in one area again then. Now I could clearly see that that last one was lapping up blood from around the head of one of the shot rats, and that's not at all unusual, and it often proves to be very costly, as it did for that one.
Things are finally beginning to slow down a bit now. It stands to reason, as I've had quite a few rats from this spot.
Wow, it was a much longer wait for that one. I'm not at all surprised. I think the fact is I've just given this area a bit of a hammering, so I'm going to clear up the shot rats and then probably move on and try another spot. Now, obviously what I intended to do this evening was to show just how good the stopping power is of those polymag shorts on rats, and I think we've certainly done that. We've had plenty of good clean kills. But to be honest with you, again, the real star of the show has been the Impact Mark II. I've adopted this gun as my go-to ratting gun this winter, and just being so compact, it's great around the farm. And furthermore, that high capacity magazine, just not having to keep reloading, it's a real blessing when you've got busy shooting like this. So hopefully when I get over to that other spot, I'll better rattle through a load more. It feels like I've shot a heck of a lot of rats this winter, and I've already been back to that farm and shot even more. Next up, here are a few tips to help you keep your shots bang on target. One question that people ask me very frequently is how to get more accuracy out of their airgun. Now, assuming that you start out with a fairly decent air rifle, there are still a few things that you can do to squeeze a bit more accuracy out of it. So here are a few of the ones that I regard as being the most important. Number one is pellet choice. So many people buy good air guns and then ruin their accuracy by either using cheap or gimmicky ammo. And the only way to really find out which pellet works best with your airgun is to try a few different brands. Now, there are a few exceptions to the rule, but generally, roundhead or domed pellets tend to outperform pointed and hollow point pellets in the accuracy stakes. So what I would suggest is that you buy a few different brands of quality domed or roundhead pellets, or borrow some from friends if you don't want to be splashing out on whole tins, and then shoot a few groups with each, and you should find that one shoots more accurately with your airgun than the rest. I don't often clean the barrels of my airguns unless they really need it, but it is worth doing it from the outset with a new gun. Also, if the accuracy of your usual setup suddenly goes awry for no apparent reason, it could just be that the barrel's fouled up and needs a clean. Now, bear in mind that a clean barrel doesn't shoot as accurately as it can until it's had a chance to lead up a little bit. So expect to put a few dozen pellets through that clean barrel before you see your groups really starting to tighten up. Quality optics are another thing that can bring a big boost to airgun accuracy. Now, you don't have to break the bank to buy a decent scope, but it is probably worth buying the best scope that you can comfortably afford. Now, if I was on a tight budget, I would happily sacrifice some of the extras such as an illuminated reticle and a really wide zoom range in preference of a simpler scope but with better glass and generally better optical quality. Now, I mention this a lot, but reliable scope mounts are another really important consideration when you're trying to get optimum accuracy from your airgun. They create the vital link between the scope and the rifle, so don't skimp and always try to go for a proven brand. Now, I've used sports match scope mounts for as long as I can remember, and I would happily recommend them. They're made to extremely precise tolerances and come in a wide range of sizes and fittings to ensure just the right fit with your scope and your gun. Trigger setup is another important factor in accurate shot placement. Now, if your trigger is unpredictable or a bit too heavy, then you're almost certain to pull shots off target. A well set up trigger shouldn't be unpredictably light or heavy, but what it should do is break in a crisp and, most importantly, very predictable manner. Trigger control doesn't end with the basic mechanical setup. You also need to have good technique, using the pad of your index finger to gently push through the trigger rather than snatching at it. Now, it's also important to have good follow through, so try and hold everything exactly where it is until well after you see the pellet strike the target. It does really make a big difference. Once you've got your ammo and basic setup right, you need to understand your chosen pellets, downrange performance with your combo. Now it's all very well zeroing up at 30 meters, but an airgun pellet has a curved trajectory. So you need to know where it's striking, probably from 10 meters right out to 40 meters, or wherever you feel comfortable shooting out to. Now the best way to achieve that is to set up paper targets from 10 meters outwards at 5 meter intervals. Now if you shoot groups at each of those targets aiming at dead center of bull, when you then study where those groups struck, some will be higher, some will be lower relative to how far they are from where you zeroed, you will then be able to calculate exactly how much hold over or hold under you need to apply using the scope's reticle in order to ensure that the pellet strikes dead center of target. Gun support can make a huge difference to your accuracy. Let's face it, the shooter is almost always the weakest link in the accuracy chain. So anything that you can do to stabilize the gun is going to be a good thing. Now, purpose-made bipods and shooting sticks are brilliant for keeping shots on target just by eliminating those wobbles, especially if you shoot a PCP. In the field, really simple things like leaning the gun into a tree, on a gate or on a fence post will all help to stop it wobbling and keep your shots dead on target. Now all of the things that I've mentioned should help you to tighten up your groups, but probably the most important thing of all is to manage your expectations. Now it's very easy to just have overinflated expectations and demand too much from yourself and your setup, especially if you've just been watching videos of shooters chalking up tight groups at 100 meters or more. Now what you need to bear in mind is that they've probably been shooting from a bench or with an outrageous amount of gun support. In real shooting, now if you're taking standing shots without any support, it could be perfectly reasonable to imagine that your maximum effective range could be just 20 meters. Now that may increase to 40 meters if you're shooting from a bipod in calm conditions. Now in all honesty, I very rarely stretch the range much beyond that sort of sweet spot of 40 meters with whatever airgun I'm using. The important thing is to have the fieldcraft to be able to get close to your quarry, and that to me is the really key thing. The thing I try to remember is that a clean kill is always worth far more than a chancy shot at recklessly long range. So that's a few of my tips to help you keep shots on target. Obviously it's also really important to put in plenty of practice, focusing on the sort of stances that you're going to be using in the field if you're a live quarry shooter. Now obviously, given the current COVID restrictions, for those of us that can't shoot in the garden or very, very close to home, it is difficult to put in those practice sessions. But I do hope that all of you are able to get out on the range and do plenty of shooting very soon.
Don't miss the award-winning Airgun Shooter magazine. It's packed with hunting features, reviews, tactics and insight to help you become an even more successful shooter. Get your copy today in shops or online.
That's all we've got time for this week, but as ever, we'll be back again in a fortnight. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. And if you're a UK airgun shooter, please have a look out for the current government consultation on which you are encouraged to respond, because it could result in more restrictions to our sport. You can find details of that on the BASC website. And of course, if you aren't already a member of the BASC, it's time you joined the organisation that works to promote and protect our sport.